This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
A key suspect is charged with murder following the New Zealand mosque shootings. Maternal deaths from C-sections are 50 times higher in Africa than in developed countries. And Cyclone Idai batters a coastal city in Mozambique. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also coming up this hour. The World Bank and the AFDB commit $47 billion to tackle the effects of climate change in Africa. And in sports, all to play for as the group stage of the CAF Champions League continues across Africa. In our top story, Brenton Harrison Tarrant, the main suspect in the mass shootings at two New Zealand mosques, has been charged with murder. The 28-year-old Australian citizen has been remanded without a plea until his next appearance in a city court on the 5th of April. On Friday, Tarrant entered two mosques and started shooting at worshippers, killing at least 49 people and wounding dozens of others.
Brenton Harrison Tarrant.
Handcuffed, Tarrant appeared in a Christchurch district court on Saturday. He did not speak, and his court-appointed lawyer made no application for bail or name suppression.
I do, however, make an interim order until the date of the next appearance, suppressing publication of the name of the named victim or of any matter that could lead to that person's identification. That interim order is made on the grounds that otherwise there could be undue hardship to the victim's family. On that basis, Mr Tarrant, you are remanded in custody until 5 April at 9:15.
The Australian citizen has been charged with murder and is likely to face further charges. Friday's attack at the two mosques is the worst in New Zealand's history.
So from the street until the mosque and shooting, until he reaches the door. When I hear that, I think because we have no idea about what happened. So I continue pray, but I found the sound of shooting coming close to me. So I try in a hurry to finish the prayer, but I can't because they already come on the main entrance and start to go. They are two and start, shooting everywhere. I saw my son in the mid of the hall and my wife back and crying and shouting and bleeding, and I can't do anything for everyone. It's very hard for us. It's very severe, hard for everyone.
People don't know if their family members are alive or dead, and if they're alive, they don't know where they're based.
Funerals are planned on Saturday for some of the victims. New Zealand has described Friday's attack as an act of terrorism. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has vowed to toughen the country's gun laws. Chamgono, CGTN.
Well, certainly a story that has left many reeling in New Zealand and indeed across the world. Let's bring you more on this now. I'm joined from Mogadishu by CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo. Abdulaziz, it's believed that some Somali nationals may have been caught up in this attack in Christchurch, New Zealand. And of course, we know that Somalia's president was among the first world leaders to send a message of condolence. Just tell us a little bit more about the reaction in Somalia.
Well, Lindy, the incident on Friday in Christchurch in New Zealand, as it has been mentioned, was one of the deadliest attacks in that country, and it was condemned here in Somalia by senior government officials, among them the country's prime minister and also the Somali president Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed Farmajo. Now, as expected, when the attack happened, it was inside a mosque, and definitely it was expected that many people of different nationalities were caught up in that attack. Now, 4 individuals, including a 6-year-old boy of Somali nationality, were among those killed in that attack. Three of them are rather grown-ups and one 6-year-old child. And the incident, the deadliest to happen there in New Zealand, caused concerns here in Somalia. The president in a tweet said that the Somali government stands in solidarity with the government of New Zealand and any other country that has suffered rather any acts of terrorism. Now Somalis also on social media and also in the country have expressed their deep sympathy and their deep concerns to those who lost their loved ones and those who lost their people in that attack. So the mood here in Somalia has been very, very emotional. Many people have taken to social media to express their solidarity with the victims of that deadly attack, Lindy.
And of course, Abdulaziz, it's very blatantly clear that the Muslim community of Christchurch was the intended target of this attack as a Muslim majority country. And of course, as we know, the Prime Minister of New Zealand is now calling this a terror attack. But just coming from a Muslim majority country, what is the feeling now in Somalia?
Well, one thing, Lindy, since this incident happened, many Somalis, both here in Somalia and abroad, they have expressed their solidarity with the people of New Zealand and the government of New Zealand. And the fact that the Prime Minister of New Zealand came to the front of cameras and said that this was a deliberate act of terror targeting the Muslim community in New Zealand, it created hope among many Somalis and many Muslims. The fact that a Western leader will come and say that that was indeed an act of terror that took place there in New Zealand. And also one thing to note also is that there is no Somalis are arguing of the view that there is no justification to that murder, and they supported the comments by New Zealand authorities to label the act as an act of terror and not to sugarcoat it and say that it was a lone wolf who carried out the attack. They want and they insist that it was a terrorist attack, and they say that the Somali officials rather say that the fact that Somalia has bear the brunt of terrorism, it has suffered deadly militant attacks here in Somalia. It does not want any other country to suffer the same challenges that it continues to face every other time, and it has expressed its solidarity with the people of New Zealand during these tough times, Lindy.
And indeed, that solidarity and Somalia's call for unity echoing around the world. Thank you so much, Abdulaziz Billo, joining us there live from Mogadishu. And as he says, 4 Somali nationals were caught up in that attack. Well, let's go live now to New Zealand, to Christchurch, where CGTN's Owen Poland is joining us now with the very latest. Owen, of course, the country, we can imagine, still reeling from the attack, as of course the main suspect made his first appearance in court. Just talk us through the very latest.
Well, I'm standing just a few hundred metres from the central mosque where 41 of the 49 victims were murdered yesterday. There's still a cordon of heavily armed police here as forensic teams work as quickly as possible to gather evidence and release the bodies to their families who are anxious to bury the dead. Throughout the day and night, thousands of people have come here to the scene to lay flowers and also pay a silent tribute. Even tonight at 11 o'clock, they keep coming. As you mentioned, 28-year-old Australian Brendan Tarrant appeared in court on one charge of murder today, but of course there's likely to be many more charges to follow, and the judge has ordered the media not to reveal his face so that he eventually gets a fair trial. Interestingly, members of his gun club say he was a reasonably normal dude, and they say they had no idea of his plans to commit mass murder.
It's certainly something that caught a very peaceful nation completely by surprise. Oh, and another factor, of course, is that this the suspect, Brendan Tarrant, was not on any government watch list. Just talk us through the government's response now going forward.
That's right. Well, the Prime Minister actually flew to Christchurch today with senior government ministers to meet in person with the leaders of the Muslim community in Christchurch. She expressed, of course, her personal condolences and offered to help support the victims' families. However, the Prime Minister also wants answers, especially from the police and the security services, about why the 3 Australian suspects flew under the radar and did not appear on any watch lists. The Prime Minister also revealed that Brendan Tarrant obtained a gun licence in 2017 in New Zealand, and that the 5 high-powered rifles and shotguns that were used in the massacre were all bought legally. As a result, she says now is a time for change in New Zealand's gun laws, and she's specifically referring to the sale of military-style assault weapons. Back to you.
Owen Poland, thank you so much for that update. Of course, we will keep following this developing story very closely in the days to come. Now, let's turn to some other news. Experts have warned that the number of mothers who die after a cesarean section in Africa is almost 50 times higher than in developed countries. According to an observational study published in the Lancet Global Health Journal, 5.43 deaths per 1,000 operations are recorded in Africa, compared with 0.1 deaths per 1,000 operations in the UK. The findings highlight an urgent need to improve the safety of cesarean operations. It is the largest study of its kind, tracking maternal mortality and complications during birth for women in Africa. Benin, Burundi, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Zimbabwe were among the 22 countries studied. Well, for more on this, we're now joined in studio by Dr. Kireki Omanwa. He's an obstetrician, gynecologist, and fertility specialist here in Kenya. Thank you so much for your time, Doctor.
You're welcome.
It's a shocking statistic in 2019 that women in Africa are 50 times more likely to die from a C-section than women in Europe. Why is this the case?
Thank you very much for inviting me to the studio to talk about this very important finding. Surprisingly, these are some of the things that we know. According to the study, actually most of these complications were because of severe intraoperative and post-operative bleeding. We know that that is a problem. Apart from that, some of these complications were because these patients came to the hospitals because of other issues, for example, what we call placenta previa, abruption of the placenta, ruptured uterus, and so on and so forth. Some of these complications can actually be sort of, we can think about them, we can plan. For instance, if you have a patient with placenta previa, this is a patient who can be followed up in clinic and can be planned on what to do cesarean, if we were to go for a cesarean section. But when they come and they are bleeding, then we have to do something about it. One of the biggest problems we have is getting blood. We have a lot of intraoperative bleeding, post-operative bleeding. Sometimes medications that are needed to sort of stop this bleeding, what we call ureterotonics, to stop the uterus, to contract the uterus, they may not be very readily available. Or if they are readily available, they may not be working the way they are supposed to work. Why? Because of some of the conditions that are expected to be stored in. One of the most straightforward drug that is used for contraction of the uterus actually is supposed to be kept in a refrigerator. So you find in some places there could be a refrigerator, or there could be no refrigerator at all. Or if there is a refrigerator, there is no electricity. Or if the electricity is there, it is fluctuating. So these are some of the things which actually can lead to such issues.
And when we look at the responsibility, or the fact that the onus really is on governments and health departments across the continent,
yes,
are they essentially failing African women in providing adequate resources for these types of emergency cesareans? I
think it's important, it's imperative that, and it's very important that you've raised that issue of government. It's very, very important because government actually have a huge role in this because they are the stewards of our health. So if the governments are not planning, if the governments are not investing enough, investing in training, personnel, doctors, nurses, midwives, and so on, investing in equipment, equipping hospital with the right equipment, with the right people, investing in medications, even if they are a little bit expensive, it is possible actually to have all this. So it is a continuum. It's not something, it is not a problem which we can solve, in bits and pieces. We have to put all these bits together. And then apart from that, there is the Millennium Development Goals, which African governments actually signed on to. And the aim of that was actually to increase the finance of healthcare, which unfortunately has not happened. So yes, in a way, African governments are actually failing African women.
And on that, though, I mean, around the world, there's talk of C-sections actually coming down, the number of C-sections being performed. Yes. But others suggesting that that number actually needs to increase in Africa, that there should be more access. What are your thoughts? My thoughts
are the C-section should be safe, whether it is increasing or whether it is decreasing. In this part of the world, access to healthcare is a problem. And for instance, if you find patients living 100 kilometers away or 250 kilometers away from a health center, not even a hospital, a health center, if such a lady starts laboring and she labors for 2 days, 3 days, cannot be able to access help, clinical help. And by the time she gets to where this help is available, you find it is too late. And this is a problem. So it is not a question of the C-sections increasing or decreasing. It is the safety of these C-sections. While we are still on it, I think, again, as I mentioned about human capital, we should actually focus on training our specialists, not task shifting to other cadres who may not be as well trained to actually undertake some of these serious surgery. C-section is major surgery, but because some of the cadres may have done maybe 1 C-section and 2 C-sections, and they think that they are capable of doing C-section, then it becomes a problem because they run into complications, they run into trouble, and they do not know what to do, and they may not have the ability to anticipate what to do or what to do in case they run into complications.
Doctor, thank you so much. We'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Dr. Omanwa here with us in our Nairobi studio. Now, let's turn to another story. Of course, we're still following the aftermath of that Ethiopian Airlines crash. In fact, the Chinese embassy in Ethiopia has urged Ethiopian Airlines to take action on the appeals of bereaved families. The Chinese ambassador to Ethiopia, Tan Jian, has urged the company to deal with the appeals from the families of Chinese victims as soon as possible. He was speaking to the CEO of the airlines, Tewolde Gebremariam. Gebremariam has said investigations are still underway and the airline is making all necessary arrangements to facilitate the investigation process. The airplane crashed near the capital of the city, Addis Ababa, on the 10th of March, and all 157 passengers on board were killed, 8 of whom were Chinese nationals.
The investigation is now being conducted, has started, and the first step is to read the FDR, flight data recorders, and CVR, cockpit voice recorder. So we have sent a delegation of 6 people to Paris with a box, and right now they are in Paris working on that process.
The families of the Chinese victims have arrived in Addis Ababa and are talking with Ethiopian Airlines. We have learnt of the concerns of those families and have fully and completely relayed them to Ethiopian Airlines. We hope that Ethiopian Airlines will take necessary action. We were communicating with Ethiopian Airlines all the time during the process to convey the requests of the families of the victims.
Meanwhile, civil aviation authorities believe that sharing recommendations and aviation safety data with other states is becoming essential. This, of course, also a response to that Ethiopian Airlines air crash that killed 157 people on Sunday. The comment was made during a 3-day National Aviation Conference in Johannesburg. CGTN's Zulisa Jamela has more.
Improving aviation safety, security and growth came under the spotlight at this conference. The gathering comes at a time when Africa is reeling after one of its worst aviation accidents. Experts here agree that in order to achieve an incident-free airspace permanently on the continent, it is critical for all of them to continue engaging in a robust and honest manner, including at times when there are issues that are difficult to deal with. The South African Civil Aviation Authority representatives decried the lack of data sharing among states in order to possibly avoid repetition of similar aviation accidents.
If we have sufficient data, we're able to say we don't have to wait for another accident. This is where the problem is. Then we're able to see where can we have collaborative approach in terms of being proactive, because safety management is about being proactive and not being reactive. Increase quality of surveillance and the quality of interactions between the regulator and the industry will also improve.
These experts believe that closer collaboration is key.
This is purely to address so that states are not isolated to do things within their state, whereas the other states are suffering or they will suffer the same fatal accident in future. Now, that again is a portal to assist states to see before they experience the similar accident, but to see what are the safety recommendations of a global concern that can be adopted by states.
The conference will conclude this weekend by zoning in on issues of cybersecurity. Commercial aviation has reportedly been facing cybersecurity-related challenges from multiple fronts. Yulison Jamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's take a short break now. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Coming up, Cyclone Idai leaves the city of Beira in Mozambique almost cut off. And an outbreak of the suspected pneumonia plague reported at Uganda's border with the DRC.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are these stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. Africa Live. Find your voice.
A powerful tropical storm has made landfall in Mozambique, battering the coastal city of Beira with heavy rain and wind at speeds of up to 170 kilometers an hour. According to the country's local officials, this week's heavy rains have claimed 66 lives, injured 111 people, and displaced 17,000 others. The country's government emergency services have yet to give an update on the situation, but CGTN's Jane Keogh reports the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has warned that the storm could end up packing winds of up to 190 kilometers per hour.
A major aid operation is underway in Mozambique and Malawi to help victims of tropical cyclone Idai. According to UN agencies, the hurricane has made landfall near the densely populated Mozambican port city of Beira after registering maximum wind speeds of nearly 200 kilometers per hour.
Tropical cyclone Idai has made landfall near the heavily populated Mozambican port city of Beira, which is a compound destructive flooding that has already occurred as far inland as southern Malawi and eastern Zimbabwe. The World Food Programme has been stepping up preparations to meet large-scale assistance needs.
Exceptional rainfall before the cyclone hit has already affected a total of 1.5 million people in both Malawi and Mozambique, claiming more than 120 lives.
I saw a woman being hit by debris. It's not safe for people walking here. The situation is very chaotic.
In addition, tens of thousands of people have been displaced and homes, roads, bridges and crops washed away. The UN agency has, however, begun to assess the extent of the flood damage and prioritize needs amongst the most vulnerable.
We expect that some of the zone will have difficult access or no access at all. I don't know if you know a bit Mozambique, we have the Zambezi River there. The Zambezi River will, of course, the water will, of course, come up a lot. You have a lot of villages and small cities there. near the river, because a lot of the commercial activities is linked to the river with people who are fishing, people who use the river for communication between villages, and those zones will be the most affected.
The Mozambican government's emergency services have yet to give an update on the situation. The storm was also expected to hit parts of neighboring Malawi. Mozambique has seen deadly floods worsened by devastating hurricanes in the past. In the year 2000, Cyclone Lindy struck the country, killing 350 people. The storm left 650,000 homeless across Southern Africa. Jean Keo, CGTN.
Several people are feared dead at Uganda's border with the Democratic Republic of Congo. This after an outbreak of a suspected pneumonia plague. The World Health Organization says confirmatory tests are being carried out at the Uganda Virus Research Institute in Kampala. CGTN's Isabel Nakiria reports.
A 35-year-old woman from Zomba district is the first victim suspected to have died from pneumonia plague. Several other people, including health workers who participated in the burial, have been identified as high risk and are being monitored. The WHO says 3 other people reportedly died of similar symptoms in the DRC. The disease causes breathing difficulties, but health officials say it can be treated once detected early. Uganda's Ministry of Health says the situation is under control, but it's cause for worry.
We have a robust surveillance system that was quickly able to detect this suspected outbreak, and our teams are already on the ground to do public awareness and also to ensure that the disease does not spread from one person to another.
The highly contagious bacterial disease is endemic in the DRC, Madagascar, and Peru. The plague is found in small mammals and fleas. It spreads to humans through flea bites and contaminated fluids. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala.
Glaucoma is a disease that damages the optic nerve and is a major cause of vision loss throughout the world. This week, the World Glaucoma Association has been observing World Glaucoma Week. They've added that nearly 90% of all visually impaired people are living in developing countries. CGTN's Samson Omale reports.
Nigerians having their eyes examined or screened for defects. For many, it is the very first time their eyes meet with such medical scrutiny.
Yeah, I'm really excited because this is my first time of examining my eye and they told me it's okay.
The International Center for Eye Health estimates that more than 1.8 million Nigerians suffer from glaucoma, with almost 360,000 of those blind in both eyes.
Research is going on, and so we're hoping that one day that we'll be able to find a cure or a way of dealing with this problem so that we can have safer eyes.
In Jos, a group of eye care specialists have delivered lectures and free screening to public civil servants as the world marks World Glaucoma Week.
So far, there is no cure for glaucoma. But can blindness from glaucoma be prevented? Yes.
For beneficiaries of this screening, it is a timely intervention.
I'm happy because I know the level of my the healthy status of my eyes for now.
I was asked to go for further check-up in the hospital, and I feel that's good. If not for that, I wouldn't have known, and that would have meant me going blind, suddenly. But I thank God they came.
Glaucoma is an eye condition that affects mostly Africans compared to other races in the world. In Nigeria, the Nigeria Blindness Survey says glaucoma accounts for about 16% of the causes of blindness in this country.
But these doctors believe that fighting the disease starts with fighting the ignorance around it. And if everybody's eyes are opened about glaucoma, it might give millions more a chance at sight itself. Samson Omale, CGTN, Jos, Nigeria.
Uganda has the only wildlife crimes court in the whole of East Africa. At a time when extinctions are on the rise, the court's prosecutors hope they'll be champions of conservation. CGTN's Leon Senyange reports from Kampala.
Wildlife crime is on the increase across Africa, and Uganda is the top transit route for wildlife products like ivory and pangolins. Over the years, authorities have continued to arrest wildlife traffickers at the entry and exit points. Now, with proper enforcement and strict laws, wildlife crime is being regulated.
We have had a very quick adjudication of the wildlife crimes. We do not have matters that go beyond even a month. This is the priority of the court, and we have had a milestone in how fast this has been done.
The court was formed in 2017. Its success has already caught the eyes of other countries like Kenya, Tanzania, and Ethiopia.
What we have come to understand is that mostly there is a differences between legal systems. Even within the common law system, there are like systems or procedures which are not available in other countries. So if they are positive in a way, if they contribute toward this swift and quality prosecution of wildlife crimes, so we tend to take those experiences.
Prosecutors are now keen on forming coalitions that could help streamline their legal and investigative operations across borders.
We are trying actually to come up with maybe standards, maybe not one policy, because we have different policies for conservation, because we have different ecosystems and different species which are endangered. But maybe just come out with a prosecution policy under the ambit of the East African Association of Prosecutors.
Several East African countries continue to propose laws that spell out either heavy minimum fines or prison terms for convicted wildlife criminals. The specialized court in Uganda has already provided the chance to improve the prosecution of wildlife crime cases in the country. Developing the competences of other courts in the region will also be key in the collaborative fight to save wildlife. Leon Sanyange, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Let's go to Algeria now, where a new constitution is due to be submitted to the public for a referendum. President Abdelaziz Bouteflika abandoned his bid for a fifth term in power this week. He also postponed an election that had been set for April, and he promised social and economic reform. Yasser Hakim now looks at the situation in Algeria and how it could influence politics in other North African countries.
President Abdelaziz Bouteflika heeded to demonstrators' calls not to run for a fifth term in office. However, this has not halted protests as hoped, a scenario people in the region have gone through before.
The door is now open for chaos in Algeria if demonstrations continue. They have to learn from what happened in Egypt and Tunisia, where the rise of political Islam caused divisions in the nations. There are calls for Friday demonstrations, exactly similar to the Arab Spring protests, in spite of Bouteflika accepting their demands. It's the same scenario as here before. This chaotic situation will damage the economy, just like how Egypt and Tunisia have suffered before.
Some experts believe the events in Algeria could have implications on neighboring countries.
If political Islamist forces take the lead in Algeria, then this will definitely affect North Africa, especially Tunisia and Morocco, where Islamists are still strong. Extremism could spread into those countries like a domino effect. This scenario will give room for foreign intervention and rise of terrorism again, just as we saw after the Arab uprisings.
Bouteflika has not yet set a new date for the elections. A national conference is expected to take place to map out the next steps.
The next few weeks are crucial for Algeria. It will determine whether the country will go through a peaceful transitional process or will it turn violent, like what happened in Libya, Syria and Yemen. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, let's take a short break now. Here's what's coming up in your business news up next. The World Bank and the AFDB commit $47 billion to Africa to tackle climate change. And President al-Sisi appoints a close military ally after a fatal train crash.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise. and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In your business news, the World Bank and the African Development Bank will together commit more than $47 billion by 2025 to help African countries tackle the effects of climate change. The banks made the announcement on the sidelines of a United Nations Environment Gathering in Nairobi. The AFDB said the funds would be used to increase investment in renewable energy projects like solar power plants. Many countries on the continent, especially those along the coast, are among the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change, such as rising sea levels and coral reef deterioration. Others are prone to more frequent droughts, desertification and floods. The World Bank said some of the beneficiaries of its funding would include projects in Ethiopia, Rwanda and Kenya.
So what we've got to do is recognize we have potentials in this area. But I'm yet to see a market in the world for potential. Nobody eats them, right? You've got to turn that into energy. And that's why every investment that we are making is how to help Africa to unlock its potential in terms of solar power. And we've done that with Morocco. They have the largest solar power plant in the world, the New Uzizate. With wind, we've invested as African Development Bank here in Lake Turkana project, which is 310 megawatts, which is the largest wind power plant in Africa. But also with geothermal, we're investing a lot in geothermal here in the Rift Valley here in Kenya, in Rwanda. We have one also with DRC, Ruzizi, and also in Burundi.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has appointed Military General Kamal al-Wazir as the country's new transport minister. Kamal replaces his predecessor Hisham Arafat, who resigned last month following a deadly train crash that killed and wounded dozens in Cairo's main station. CGTN's Yasser Hakim reports.
The latest tragic accident that killed over 25 people in Cairo has triggered the development process into action. This week, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi announced a plan to overhaul the railway system in the country.
We have contracted the development of 290 railway carriages and will buy 1,300 new carriages and 200 railway tractors. We'll upgrade 81 tractors and will purchase 6 full air-conditioned luxury trains. All these will be delivered in the next year and a half. This will go hand in hand with the upgrade of all other segments of this sector. It will be delivered with the highest quality.
The president chose a powerful military man, General Kamel al-Wazir, to oversee the revamp of the rundown railway sector.
He is up to the responsibility. The railway sector needs extensive work on improving the trains, machinery, carriages, and even the drivers themselves. They must be closely monitored to avoid any mistakes again.
Being from the military, he is very strict, well organized, and serious at work. He visited all locations on the first day to show he will not waste time.
Railway accidents have been a common theme of the last few decades. Experts say the challenges are huge for the incoming minister, Kamel al-Wazir. 3 ministers of transportation in the last 5 years have all lost their jobs because of tragic railway accidents.
Kamel al-Wazir has a long and successful history in managing construction and infrastructure projects. The basic problem with the railway sector is with management and bureaucracy. He must develop the administrative and management system to adopt the principle of punishment and reward, and also to fight corruption. I believe the private sector should also be given licenses to operate railways, as this will create competition and in turn will improve quality.
The president has also set a target to link the railway system with Sudan and all the way to Ethiopia.
A delegation has traveled to Sudan to study the first phase of the project. The railway line will begin from the High Dam, which will be the last stop for Egyptian trains. From there, it will go along the Nasser Lake and Helfa Valley to reach a railway station inside Sudan called Abu Hamad. The distance is about 600 kilometers.
The Egyptian president announced a 2-year deadline for the upgraded railway system to be ready, and he set a budget of $15 billion for the project. As Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Tunisia has concluded this year's edition of the Plastic Expo in the capital Tunis. The event, organized by the Tunisian Chamber of Plastic Manufacturers and Processors, attracted several of the world's leading companies in the plastic industry. CGTN's Adnan Chouachi reports.
The Krum Exhibition Center in Tunis hosted the Plastic Expo. 93 Tunisian and 37 foreign participants from Africa, Asia, Europe and North America took part in the international event. Following the success of the 2017 edition, the 2019 fair was an opportunity for giant companies in plastics industry to ink agreements with new clients.
Nowadays, thanks to technological advancements and continuous innovation, plastic components are used in everything, including planes, cars and home appliances. Plastic Expo 2019 gathers the world's leading companies in plastics to present their latest innovations and to sell their products like eco-plastic or biodegradable plastic, which revolutionized the industry.
Several Chinese companies have held B2B meetings with potential clients and signed contracts with Tunisian and African partners.
For our company, we have two main products. One is plastic extrusion, while the other is plastic recycling, including the washing, including the palletizing. And now the Tunis market is growing fast, so more and more Chinese companies like us. We came here to not only for business, but also to see any other opportunities.
Tunisian industrialists and professionals emphasize the importance of boosting trade and cooperation with Chinese companies in plastics industry.
Most of our machines are imported from China. Made in China products guarantee quality. We are making 3D plastic components for dozens of clients here in Tunisia, the Maghreb region and Sub-Saharan Africa.
There are about 500 specialized companies in plastics industry in Tunisia. The majority operate with 100% national capital, while others are foreign or mixed capital firms which employ nearly 15,000 people. According to the president of the Tunisian Chamber of Plastic Manufacturers and Processors, most of the enterprises in this sector are export-oriented businesses. Plastics sector represents 3% of GDP. It is ranked third in Tunisian industry after mechanical and electrical industries. Adnan Chouachi, CGTN, Tunis.
The African Tourism Development Organization has been established in Cairo, and it aims at building infrastructure and offering expertise to develop the tourism sector. The organization will also work on a strategy to facilitate travel between African nations to promote intra-tourism on the continent. CGTN's Yasser Hakim has more.
African tourism is on the rise, but not yet to the levels seen in Europe or Asia. Ironically, intra-African tourism is lower compared with visitors coming from outside the continent.
There are challenges that hinder the development of tourism here. For example, airline flights don't reach all the capitals of African countries, and roads between states are still in poor conditions, and the railway system doesn't link many countries together. There's a lot of work needed on infrastructure. This is one of the vital reasons for having a continental organization to tackle these issues.
From this concept came the idea of establishing the African Tourism Organization. It's an entity that will study the challenges facing African tourism and form a strategy to help African countries attract more visitors from within the continent.
It's very important to have such an institution to coordinate between African states and present Africa to the rest of the world in a professional manner, like the Arab Tourism Organization. It will tap investment opportunities between African countries and lead efforts to attract investments in tourism companies, travel agencies, and constructing hotels. It can also help create programs for tourists to visit several African countries in every trip.
Making use of the strong infrastructure and experience in Egypt, the institution will also be providing training courses to upgrade the skills of tourism workers and executives from different African countries. The aim is to make Africa an attractive and lucrative destination for foreign visitors and become a strong competitor in the international market.
The board of directors and structure of the organization have not been formed yet, but Cairo, being the chair of the African Union at the moment, has been chosen as the host of the headquarters of this organization. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on Africa Live. Coming up, we show you how Tanzania is using music to fight drug abuse.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
A famous East African hip-hop artist has decided to team up with the Tanzanian government to address drug abuse. The Drug Combat Enforcement Agency has called on Kalapina and other popular musicians to use messaging in their music to help influence young Tanzanians. Many remain addicted to cocaine, marijuana and heroin, and the government hopes that music might prevent others from going down the same road. CGTN's Daniel Kijo has more.
Kalapina has taken part in many rap battles, but now he's fighting a war against drugs. Using hard-hitting lyrics and a TV show, he's reaching out to drug users who are seeking a way out. His hit song, Hip Hop Bila Madawa, which means hip-hop without drugs, has become an anthem that has put many drug users on the road to recovery. But he says more needs to be done.
We save people from drugs, then what next? If they have nothing to do, they will relapse. So my dream for my foundation is to ensure that once we save the youths from drugs, we can give them entrepreneurial skills so they can employ themselves and move on.
Crack cocaine, heroin and marijuana are considered the top 3 drugs in Tanzania. According to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, there are over 500,000 heroin users in East Africa, with 60% of those users living in Dar es Salaam. The drugs sold are of low quality, with one dose costing as little as $1 US. Kalapina uses his hardcore hip-hop persona to connect to the streets. And it is here in Tandale's streets where Tanzania's drug problem is most pronounced. With each episode he films, he said he's trying to spread his message of saying no to drugs to those who need to hear it most. The government recognizes that musicians have an influence on society, but many are also victims. It reports that many artists are drug users, but that most try to hide it. Now the government says it wants to work together to eradicate the problem.
I ask all of us, we the government and you have a lot to do. Our unity is our strength. That is what will help eradicate drugs from our country or ensure the usage is as low as possible.
Along with prevention measures, the government has set up methadone clinics which offer replacement therapy treatment. Winnie is a recovering addict who's been attending this methadone clinic for the past 2.5 years. She lost her business and the respect of her family.
It can't be tasted. You can't say, let me try it for just one day. It's impossible. It's not something to be close to you or your family.
With the government backing and recognition, more artists like Kalapina could be a voice of reason to those suffering from addiction, and perhaps a protective song for those who may be tempted. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
And in Tunisia, following the approval by Parliament, the construction of a modern cultural centre funded by China has kicked off in the capital, Tunis. The centre is one of the most modern Chinese projects in North Africa, and it will offer several services like sporting and cultural activities, as well as teaching Mandarin to the local population.
During the meeting with the Parliament Speaker, China's ambassador to Tunisia, Wang Wenbin, voiced satisfaction with the development of the Tunisian-Chinese cooperation.
China is committed to continuing supporting Tunisia and strengthening the bilateral cooperation in the fields of economy, trade, tourism, higher education and culture.
The Tunisian Parliament has recently approved the agreement signed between authorities in Tunis and Beijing on the creation of cultural centers in both countries.
We commend the House of the People's Representatives' adoption of the organic law approving an agreement between Tunisia and China for the creation of cultural centers. We are ready to consolidate this important partnership.
The construction of a new cultural center in Benarouz city, south of the capital city Tunis, has kicked off. Local authorities and many volunteers.
About $33 million. At least 20,000 people will benefit.
China is financing this mega cultural and sporting project and providing technical and logistical expertise.
Tunisian Parliament Speaker emphasized the role of parliamentary diplomacy in the development of bilateral cooperation and the exchange of expertise between Tunisia and China. Mohamed Nasser also stressed the common will to support bilateral cooperation in the political, economic and cultural fields. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
And coming up in your sports news, up next. All to play for as the group stage of the CAF Champions League continues across Africa.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way.